The first thing I'd like you to do before we do anything else is to please write down 3 words describing how you feel right now. It does not matter. Don't try not to edit it too much. Try to just say what's on your mind. And then I want you to put them aside and not look at them. We're going to return to this question twice more during the class. So just write it down. I'll do it too. For some of us, it's early morning. Well, not early morning. For some of us, it's morning, some afternoon, some evening.
No, Sonny. Don't be quiet.
All right. And then, Renee, why don't you say hello and tell everybody where you are, who you are, and
Hi, I'm Renee Reisman. I'm in Los Angeles, California. I'm an arts and culture writer and recent member of the LA Press Club. I just joined last year. But I've been writing, I started freelancing in about 2017. So it's been writing for like what year is it now? Yeah, like around 8 years. I write mostly for the art blog Hyperallergic, but I work in the LA Times and a few other places too. I'm also an artist. So I do like writing half of my job and then as a freelancer. And then the other half of my job is I'm an adjunct professor and I teach digital art. So I've actually never taken a painting class in my life, which is so funny to be like, I'm an artist, but I've never taken painting. I've done drawing, like, and I consider myself like decent at drawing, and I run a drawing club for people with disabilities in LA. But yeah, I don't know anything about painting, and I thought mixing colors was going to be really like easy and fast for me, and then I keep not mixing them the way I want to. Whereas like digital color, I could just like slide it and be like, that's the one I want. So it's really, but I think this is going to help me a lot with translating a lot of these theories to teaching other color theory and like digital design. So yeah, but nice to meet you.
Oh yeah, it's going to blow your head open in a good way. In a good way.
Yeah.
Agatha, why don't you say hello since you weren't in the last class? Agatha is the reason this class is happening because she asked for it in December. So, did we lose you?
Yeah, I did. I missed the first one because I was traveling.
You look a little, oh, there you are. Yeah, no worries. No, that wasn't a call out. That was actually a credit to you that the reason this class is happening is because but it looks like, there we go. Okay, so let's see. There we are. Try it again.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes. So tell everybody where you are and who you work for and yada, yada.
Yeah. So I am based in Gdańsk. I also work for Reuters.
Gdańsk, Poland.
Gdańsk, Poland. Yes. Right. I work in Gdańsk, Poland. I work for Reuters for the Nordic team. But also kind of unofficially, I also work for the UX research team, which is based in London, but I'm helping. So that's part of my sort of daily duties as well. And I joined this I like Leah said, I asked for this class specifically because I would really love to learn watercolor. It's like kind of a dream of mine. I've been trying on my own.
And probably having mixed results because it's like hard to know. Yeah.
So
it's tricky.
Learn the basics. Yeah.
Let me introduce everybody else to you fairly quickly. Valentina.
Have we met Valentina?
Weren't you here last week? Yeah. I'll introduce you. Sorry. Valentina is in Milan. She is a co-worker of Francesca Landini, also in Milan.
Now I remember.
And Francesca finally is a great attender of these classes, and Francesca finally talked Valentina into coming. So we're really happy to have somebody else from Milan. That's Reuters. MC is in London and works for Reuters on the remind me what team?
I am on the video team.
The video team, that's right. Anik is also in Gdansk, Poland, working for Reuters on the learning, well, you're a learning editor, is that right? That's the best way to say it. I always like misidentify what Anik does because she does such a wide-ranging job and it seems to be changing all the time. Sandra Mahler is in DC, originally from France, but worked for Reuters. How many years have you worked for Reuters?
41 years.
41 years.
41.
Yes, she started when she was 12. No, I know she looks like she started when she was 12, but she's amazing. And Diana Ungeas is the LA Press Club director in LA. She's in Topanga Canyon. She's in her studio right now. And some people have been here taking these classes for like 5 years. Other people are just starting out. And my name is Leah Kohlenberg. I'm your teacher. I'm in Portland, Oregon, somewhere I think nobody else is. I was a journalist for 10
Actually-
years. And
Was
then
it- Sorry, wasn't there a Leah who was in Portland?
different class.
Ah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, there is a Leah Davis, but not in this class.
Okay.
I was a journalist for 10 years. I worked for small dailies around the US in the 90s. I worked for Time Magazine in Hong Kong, in the handover to China. I was sent as a night fellow to Mongolia, where I spent a year in Ulaanbaatar and traveling around working with journalists there. And then I became an artist. I wonder how that happened. You know, I blame Mongolia, really. Mongolia kind of changed everything for me. And for the last 25 years, I've been an artist, but I don't forget my journalist roots, which is why it's so nice to have everybody here. This is a mental health class. But I am a firm believer in I'm going to show you things that most teachers will either not be able to describe to you because they're so artisty, they don't know how to describe it. I'm going to talk to you about technique because that's the thing that's going to get you farther. As all of you have noticed, mixing colors isn't very easy. We're going to spend all of today working on the different ways that you can make watercolor mark making. So I want you, and next week we'll start doing kind of more scenes and that kind of thing. But last week, we just focused on color mixing and lightening our colors, learning how to do that with water. This week, it's going to be the different kinds of mark making you can do in watercolor. So I would suggest that I have 3 sheets of paper, watercolor paper here. Here's my setup. Here's my palette. This is a sheet of, this is from a beginning drawing class. It's the back of a printer paper. This is what I like to call scrap paper or testing paper, because a lot of times in watercolor, you're not going to want to put your brush down until you know kind of how the paint is behaving. So having a testing sheet is really important, separate from your painting. And it is not watercolor paper because I don't want to waste good watercolor paper on it, but I can still learn a lot of things. And these paints are a variation on the paints I asked you to get. I actually started with, hold on, I just realized I'm kind of low on one of the paints. Where are you? Burnt umber. I have I don't use watercolor as often, so my watercolor paints are not as organized. I use tubed paint. Burnt sienna. I'll start with burnt sienna. I use tube paint, which means that it comes out a little bit wet. I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of sticky, like kind of like frosting or something like that. And it is true. And then I put them I keep refreshing them in this palette. So yes, this will eventually dry into a pat. So those of you who have the pats, that's totally fine. I like having tubed watercolor paint. You're not going to see it this time, but you're going to see there's 1 or 2 extra things we can do with it if we have a little bit of wettish watercolor paint. So if you are, I think everybody's kind of set up here. You're also going to need water. I have two brushes we're going to be working with today. My favorite brush, which is a flat, but this is also a very common watercolor brush people like to use. So I have an example of this too. I want to compare it for you. You probably want to use a brush like this, that size here in my right hand. Do not do that. That is a control thing. The problem is this brush makes little tiny marks that you won't want on your paper. The first thing we're going to do is a flat wash where we don't want any marks on our paper. We want to do a flat line of color. And so to do that, you need bigger brushes. Be aware that your instinct to use this is very normal, but I don't want you to use it. So I'm showing you in advance. This is about a half an inch or maybe, I don't know, 10 centimeters. I don't know what size this one because it's pointy, but you can see it in kind of comparison. Put these things away. Get your biggest brush. And Sandra and Diana, of course, just send across what you're working on as you're working on it. Everybody ready to do the first big, show you how to do the first big thing. The first mark making we're going to talk about is how to make what we call a flat wash. And all of the mark making that we do can be done two ways. It can be done wet on wet, meaning we wet the paper first, and then we put wet paint on top of it, or wet on dry. Now, my recommendation is that you keep these sheets and you write on them the way I'm going to, so that you have a record of what it looks like, right? Wet on wet versus wet on dry. In fact, you can see here from yesterday, flat, or from Tuesday's class, this is a flat wash, wet on wet, right? We'll talk about what that is, so that you kind of have a sense of what, and I'm just using the backside because why not? Keep it with you, just like I had you keep this one, right? This is going to be helpful. If you keep this and you mark it, then you know what your colors do as they get lighter when you add more water to them. Before we go on, and you should be using at least 140 pound or 300 gram watercolor paper. Don't use printer paper, don't use drawing paper. You need to use watercolor paper. And let me talk a little bit about why. Last week, I think I showed you guys that I did these little watercolor sketches on watercolor paper for this big project I'm doing on doorways. So I told you, or maybe it wasn't this class, it could have been another class. But what's really interesting to me is that I couldn't find my favorite one. I couldn't find my favorite piece. And later I saw it sitting in a pan of water, like it had fallen off it had fallen off my table, drawing table into a pan of water. And it just sat there and soaked for 24 hours before I found it. I want to show it to you what it looks like. Look at that. Look at this. I mean, it's a little bit more tanned than the other ones, but I want you to notice this watercolor paper can take a lot. And look what happened. It didn't blend. I didn't smudge. It's pretty like, even though it sat in a pan of water overnight, it didn't really do anything to it significantly. So be aware that this paper can take a lot of water. I guess that's my point. Okay, so we're going to start with a flat wash. I'm going to demo it once. I might also demo it again using the wet on wet technique. And what that means is I'm going to take my brush into the water and I'm going to actually wet my paper in even strokes in a small kind of box format. I know you can't see this, but you can see I'm dipping my paper in water and I'm getting my paper wet. And then I'm going to dip it in some paint. This is dry paint. It's kind of a pink. And now I'm going to go right on that wet surface. And with even strokes, trying to get rid of lines in between, I'm going to go down the whole length of the paper. I'm willing to do this again just a little bit closer so you can see what's happening. So you're going to see two things are happening. One is that, and I want that the goal is to make this kind of an even wash with no marks. So you can see that one thing that's happening is the paint is reacting to the wet water and it's kind of moving around in little beads. So notice I'm kind of pushing it out these wet beads of water so that I get more even coverage. So I start with this downstroke and then I kind of move around the little beads of water with more paint in them until I have a more even surface. That is harder than it looks. It's okay if your edges are a little bit darker. This alone is really challenging surface. I'm going to mark this. This is flat wash. Wet on wet. I will send you a picture of it so you can see it after we do the flat wash wet on dry, but I want you to try it. And if you mess it up, that's fine. That's what this lesson is about. Just go through your paper, try it again. Oh, I forgot to mention that having your blankie, which in my case is a little piece of paper towel crumpled up in my left hand, is my right hand, my non-painting hand is helpful because if you get too much water, paint, you can also kind of pull it up a little bit, but you want to be careful not to pull it so much up that you create an uneven surface. So the biggest challenge with watercolor is that it's tends to, it's a very uneven texture if you're not paying close attention and you're not practicing with the brush. So the first thing I'm asking you to do is the thing that is actually not something that's easy to do. It's to create an even texture using on already wet paper. So go ahead and try that and send it over the thread. In fact, I will actually take a picture of this so you can see it. It's okay if you don't get it right. I'm going to turn my demo camera off for a second so I can photograph and send across the WhatsApp thread. Yeah. Yeah, Diana, I think I finally figured out how to get that guy off. I had to actually boot him off the thread. I thought blocking him would be enough, but it is not. It was not to be.
Good.
So that's kind of how that looks. It's weird. You used to be able to just block people on WhatsApp and then they wouldn't. So I had to go that extra step.
Bringing digital techniques.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're getting wise-asser and wise-asser. Sandra, send over what you're working on. Diana, send over what you're working on. Oh, you don't have to if you're not ready to.
Yeah,
No
I'm
worries.
working on a snake. Can I say
You are?
a couple of things about paper?
Um,
Can I say a couple of things about paper, by the way, that came to mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
The quality of a paper is more important than the quality of a paint when it comes to results. And
Agreed.
the best kind of paper is 100% cotton. It's more expensive and you might not want to use that now. But also, you'll find there's several kinds of paper. There's hot press, cold press, and rough. And I find that to start with, you might find a cold press easier. So just if you go to buy paper, that might guide you a little bit.
Sandra, that's amazing advice. I love it. Renee, that looks fantastic. Agata, not bad, but I want you to notice, and I'm gonna push this up so that everybody can see it. The challenge here is that you want to, here, hold on. Sandra, would you be willing to like write that down and send it across the thread? It doesn't have to be now.
Sure.
I think that advice is really golden.
Okay.
Sandra's been working with watercolor for a couple of years now. And I want to show you Agata's piece, which isn't bad, but can you guys see this? You see this line here and here? We don't want that line, which means you need to go back over a couple of times to kind of push it out, right? So it's not just we want a flat wash. So we don't want these extra marks here. You want to try and make this. It's hard. Let's see. Not bad, MC. Good. Good. Who was that? Anik. Nice. Flat washes. Valentina. Good. Those look great. I like that. All right. Let's try. I'm going to stop the share. Let's try a flat wash, wet on dry. So instead of wetting my paper, I'm just going to clean up my brush. And I'm, by the way, just cleaning, I'm using my water to clean up my brush and I'm kind of tapping out. I want it to be wet, but not super wet. Let's see, let's try green on this one. So instead of, I need a little bit more water. Instead of a little bit more water, I'm going to so I'm just going to put paint on a dry. Although I wonder if it's kind of reacting. See, so Agatha, see here how I have that line? I get rid of it by going over it again. And kind of smoothing and a little bit of tapping. So the goal here is really, once you make a mark, you kind of go back over it while it's still wet. See, there's another line. I'm kind of pushing it around. Oh, now I've made another mess. Welcome to the world of watercolor. This is a manipulation technique that's tricky. And you have to kind of go, notice I've gone up and down several times. Okay, so that is a flat wash, wet on dry. Do it, send it over, and then shout out and tell me. Here, I'll send a picture over again. Tell me what is easier for you? Flat, what do you think is easier? And there's no, right or wrong answer to this question. Hold on. Picture. What feels easier? I want you to, if you don't get it, I want you to do it again until you get it. So maybe you use a whole paper to do flat washes, wet on wet. And you take another piece of paper to go over and try other things. Watercolor is something that we have to approach with care. Our marks make a big difference. It's very easy to make very dramatic marks. Once it dries, it's harder to get off. You can sometimes lift stuff off with like a wet brush with water and a paper towel, but that also creates marks. So better to learn how to manipulate the brush to get this what you want on the first go, because you don't want everything to be like kind of spotty. The general rule of thumb here is that mark making is important, and every mark here is visible, and the person who's looking at your painting will wonder why that mark is there. And if there's not a reason for it, it's going to feel weird to them. That's going to be what we call bumping. It's not going to feel right. Let's see here. Take a look at what everybody's doing. Yeah, wet on dry is easier. I agree, Renee. Okay, let's see here. Flat wash. I guess I'm going to go backwards. Wait. Wet on dry. Nice. Nice, Anik. Good job, you guys. Yeah, it's easier. So know that there's a little bit more manipulation that has to happen with flat wash, but also notice that yes, perfect. Thank you, Sandra. You're the best. The watery one has a softer, kind of more romantic view. And I think that's important. Sometimes you want that softness, which means you got to work a little harder for it. Nice. Good job, Valentina. What do you think is easier? Nice, MC. What do you guys think is easier? Is dry easier than wet? Yeah, really good, Agatha. Excellent, 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 excellent. Which is easier?
Looks better.
Um,
For consistency.
yeah, flat wash, wet on dry. I think wet on dry is a little bit easier to get this done, but it's a little bit harsher. It's a little bit stronger too, and sometimes that's not what you want. Sometimes you want something softer for skies, for tree lines, for grasses sometimes. So it's just good to know that these are things that you can do.
Because it's all about edges, right, Leah? Which
It's all about edges, exactly.
it gives
Yeah.
harder edges.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, there is another paint. Thank you for reminding me, Sandra, it's so much. There's so much to painting that you have to keep in your mind. And along with mark making, right, is the concept of hard and soft edges. So a hard edge is this edge here, where this paint abruptly ends, and on the other side is no paint. That's a hard edge. And notice that we go right to that. A soft edge means there might be a transition from dark to light, but there's not a strong line. Basically, painting is made up of hard and soft edges. And with watercolor, you can sometimes get a better soft edge with the wet on wet technique, but it's harder. Anybody have questions about this?
Yes, actually.
Observations?
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell us about when you look at a painting. You said your eye. Did you say that your eyes go to the hard edges first, and so?
There are a couple of things that your eye goes to in painting. Number one is a hard edge, yes, but often a hard edge with a big good contrast between light and dark. So this is a very specific edge, right? Because it's so dark and this is so light next to it. So we go to hard edges with good contrast. But we also look at any edge with contrast, where you go from a lighter to a darker. So those things we notice too, and that is a way of looking at, right? So it might be like from here to here, right? The slightly darker edge, which I didn't quite get rid of in my first piece, in my first go here. That's a soft edge from here to here, but I can still see it, right? Because it's not, it's there is a contrast that, so it's when we transition from a darker to a lighter that we notice it. Also, just to keep it in mind, apparently our eyes go to yellow first in a painting, or the thing that's closest to yellow. So when you're laying down yellow, be aware that people will go to that the eye will go there. So you want to pay very close attention to your mark making, or use your yellow very strategically. I love yellow. It's my favorite color. I loved learning that. Okay, now we're going to do something a little bit more fun and a little less precious. We're going to try wet on wet flat washes with two different colors. So once again, I'm cleaning up my brush. I'm making my paper wet. You can't see it, right? I wonder if I should push this down a little bit more. Yeah, you can see it a little bit more if I push it down. I also got this paper wet on the other side, so there's a little, the water's beating up a little bit on this side. Let's see, what color do I want to use? I'm gonna try yellow, since we were just talking about yellow. I'm gonna do a flat wash. So still trying to keep, which means I have to keep going back and loading my brush with paint. Notice I've done that 3 times, right? I'm pushing that little bead around. And then before it dries, I'm going to go to another color, pink, and drop in, while this is still wet, I'm going to drop in some marks, some other colors. And look what happens. It gets this kind of fantastic. This is where, so if you want to cover up some line that you made in your flat wash, this is your opportunity to do that. I'm showing you what happens when you drop wet color onto wet paper, onto wet color. This is really wet on wet on wet. Notice the little starbursts. Notice flat wash, 2 colors, wet on wet. Notice how the water carries, and this is the thing that makes it hard. Notice how the water kind of carries things around. You can still kind of push it and manipulate it with your brush, but it does a lot of things that you can't really control. However, sometimes this is the mark making you need, so it's good to know how to make it. Because if you do this, I'm going to do a dry, a wet on dry. If you do this, let's see, let's do blue. I'm doing this wet on dry now. Yeah, my paper is this is I should probably have used a fresh piece of paper. I can work with this. I can make this happen. Right. Here's cobalt blue. And then look what happens when I drop, oh, I don't know. Red, I'm kind of orangey red into it. It slightly looks different. It's still wet, but notice that the mark making has a different, it's a little bit denser because it doesn't have that extra layer of water pushing things around. So try that. Flat wash, 2 colors, wet on dry. It's funny, watercolor really is the hardest painting medium to learn. Oil and acrylic are much more forgiving. You can go dark, let it dry, and layer lights on top. But if you go too dark with watercolor, you lose your lights completely. We're going to practice that in next week's lesson. I'm going to take a picture of this. I'll be right back up. So my hope is you have a little shock and awe going, that it's different than you thought it was going to be. And maybe if you've tried to do this yourself, you're also understanding why you couldn't before. Because there's very specific technique involved with this. Let's see. Let's see here. Let's see what people are putting in. I do have WhatsApp on my computer, so I can at least look a little bit. Ooh, neat. It kind of looks like a little poppy field, doesn't it, MC? It has a kind of, there's a neat little something going on there. Also notice that it's slightly grayed, right? Does anybody remember why? Why is her red kind of slightly grayed? Does anybody remember? That was from last week.
She
Why?
used, is it because she did like 2 cools or 2 warms together?
No, but you're close.
2 opposites.
Yeah, complementary colors. Do you remember the 3 pairs? Green and red, blue and orange, purple and yellow. When you put them next to each other, they pop each other forward. When you mix one with the other, you get a grayed version, a neutralized version. This is very important because you're going to be doing, when you're mixing for paintings, you're going to be doing a lot of shadow areas. If you're doing a red apple, you're not going to put black in your shadows. You're going to mix a little bit of green into your red and vice versa, right? To create a shadow version. So we want kind of neutralized versions. They're very important. I think our 5-year-old self wants to just throw color on there and wants it all to pop forward. In reality, what happens is if you mix too much color together, you get mud, you get brown. So it's a very nuanced thing, mixing. As Renee was pointing out, it's tricky. You should tap it off as much as a good question, Renee. You should tap it off as much as you need. Renee asked, my brush is too wet. That is a very common rookie mistake in painting, watercolor painting. Tap it off until you, when you get the result you want. So test it here. If you're not sure, if you're like, so this is, I would say, here, say I got my brush really wet here, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I lay it down there. Oh, tap it off until I get the result that I want. That's how much you tap it off. So a lot. You're going to be constantly kind of shaking extra water off your paper. And good observation, wonderful observation about how that works. As we know, when we add more water to something, it becomes a little softer. The pigments get a little bit diluted, right? As we learned from this lesson, the more water we add, the more diluted the pigments get. Okay, let's see. How's this going? It's kind of fun, isn't it? Ooh. Renee, your wet wash on dry looks like a little bit like the earth. I like both those techniques. And Valentina, it looks like oh yeah, interesting. So notice you use so much green that it kind of took over your yellow and you can't really see the yellow anymore. That's because we mix yellow in with blue to make green. That's one of the reasons. I like the two colors. These are really cool. Notice that everybody's mark making looks a little different. That's totally okay. MC, nice, nice. Yep, yep. These are great. These are awesome. Great job, you guys. We're exploring here, right? We're exploring what can the brush do for us? Okay, so we're spend another minute doing that. I'm going to show you something called a gradient wash. And that's a little bit like what Sandra and I were talking about earlier, which is that you're going to create a soft edge where you use one color and you get your darker and you gradually get whiter as you go down or up the page. So we're going to do that, of course, as wet on wet first. And that's really tricky. Don't worry if you don't get it. Okay, so because I want a gradient wash, I want something that's darker for me at the top. I'm going to notice I didn't dip my brush in the water. I just dipped it in the paint. And then I'm going to dip it in the water, tap it a couple times, and go down. Oh, yep. And then I've got that dark, heavy dark. I'm dipping it in the water again. And I have this kind of little pool that's hanging out here. So I'm spreading it a little bit. And then I'm bringing it back up here, that dark. See how I'm pushing that little bead around? And the challenge is not to, but I don't think I'm quite there yet. So I may have to go over with more dark on top. And part of my challenge, see, I'm struggling with this one too. So this is hard. This is the hardest one. And that's because the water is wet. So the paint kind of wants to move around with it. But I do really want something that's lighter down here and darker up here. And I want that transition. So I keep pushing that paint back up. Might actually get a new piece of paper because here's where I feel like my watercolor paper, because I've used it, I've wet it on one side, it's kind of misbehaving. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get a fresh piece. Try that again. Let's try that again. See, look, your teacher made a mistake. That means everybody else is allowed to make mistakes.
I still can't do this. properly. So.
It's hard. It's hard. I'm starting with a lot of paint at the top, and then I'm dipping my brush in the water and tapping it and kind of layering. Now that's easier because I'm using a fresh piece of paper. See how that, now this is not really what I want because it's too hard an edge. So I'm going back over with a little bit more paint. And I'm bringing, I want there to be a transition from light to dark, but I don't want a heavy line. Yeah, it's really hard. You may or may not get it this lesson. Particularly wet on wet. This is a hard one. Getting there. I keep getting my brush wet, tapping it. Because there's a lot of water on here already, so you want to like kind of tap off any excess. There we go. That's a little bit better. I'm doing tapping, kind of moving up and down. Yeah, there we go. Creative wash. Yeah, that's not too bad. This is called a graded wash, a gradient wash. Wet on wet, one color. Maybe the hardest thing you do today. So let that be okay. Start over. I'm even pulling a tiny little bit of this off. See how I'm using the corner of my blankie, my security blankie. But if I use it too much, then I get these marks, which I don't really want. So now I've got to kind of smooth those out a little bit. There you go. And then, of course, there's a gradient wash, dry, wet on dry. So let's see how that goes. Go with green. Okay. Notice I keep going back in and tapping my brush to get a lighter version. I think that's much easier. Not totally easy. To me, it feels much easier. And I keep going in and getting more paint on the top here, and then trying to kind of tap through on the edges so that there's a subtle transition from lighter to darker. Once again, pushing up those. A lot of the tapping that I'm doing happens from here. So see, here's a strong, hard line. I kind of tap half in the middle of the lighter area and half in the darker edge. So see how I can kind of, I'm almost tapping away that edge. A bit better. Gradient wash. Wet on dry. One color. Okay, I want you to try both of those. And then when you're done, I want you to take a moment to write down how you feel, 3 words that describe how you feel right now. I'll do it too. And then don't look at them, put them away. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . I'll send you pictures of mine too, so you can see them. MC, not bad, but a little, your edge is a little bit hard where you go from light. Can you see that? So try softening that with a little bit of water. This is super hard, so I'm not trying to minimize what y'all are going through as you're doing this. It's hard. Try this a few times. Give yourself a page to just do this, because this is it. Don't forget to write down how you feel. 3 words, saying how you feel right now. Don't edit yourself. Say how you really feel. It's okay. It's okay to use negative emotions, positive, neutral. It's okay. This is the mental health aspect of your art lesson. All right, let's see here. Where are we? Yeah, not bad. And very funny, honey. That's cute. I like your little ghost there. Renee, you're kind of missing it. Do you see it? You've sort of got it. You need to give yourself more room or get another piece of paper. Get it on another piece of paper. Give yourself room for this. Yeah. Yeah. Good job, though. Good attempt. A little bit better, but notice you've still got, okay, I want you to watch, MC, I want you to watch this. You still have this line here. Here, I'm going to pop this up and point it out because I know everybody else is struggling with the same thing. Thank you for letting us look at it. Where are we? I'm going to point it so you can really see it here. Hold on, I'm going to share. This is super hard, like I said. So take a look. See this line right here? That's a very heavy line. So you want to soften that by putting your brush kind of, a wet brush kind of half here and half there and tapping. Try tapping.
Okay.
I know it's hard. I know. But we don't want that heavy line. Do you see how mine are soft? It's a light transition. It's a transition, but it's a transition over from dark to light. There's no heavy lines in the middle. If I put a heavy line in like this, right? Like that, see that heavy line? I tap it out. There's a little water too. Which often means you have to redo everything. See that? See how I'm tapping kind of half on the line and half off into the lighter area? There we go. Yeah. Notice I went over for a second time and that got easier. I was able to kind of layer, once it dries, this dried, and I was able to more easily go in and knock out that heavy line. And just to be fair, one of the things you guys are going to start noticing, for some of you, this is going to be easier than for others. That's because some of you are a little bit more attuned to working with a brush. And for others of you, the brush is an entirely new instrument and a tool. Let I'm trying to think of the way to say this in the big way. The big thing to know is that there's so many things to know about art and so many materials and so many tools and so many techniques that you're going to find some things feel easier for you and some things feel harder. Everybody will be challenged. I am very challenged by pencil. I've made my peace with it after 25 years, but I am very challenged by the pencil. But give me a paintbrush and I'd much rather use that. So that means I have a kind of natural propensity for the paintbrush, and I don't like to draw. But of course I need to know how to draw and I need to know how to use a pencil in my work. It's important. But I'm aware that for me personally, I like to think of myself as a paintbrusher. Other people, the pencil is going to make more sense than the paintbrush, and you're going to struggle more with the paintbrush. That's okay. Everybody gets better at everything. I can tell you after 25 years, I'm way better with the pencil. And in fact, teaching beginning drawing is probably my favorite class. Besides this one, which is really hard and kind of fun, right? Because I'm trying to break down things that I do without thinking. But it's really, so you can get there, but it's good to notice what is it that you are good at and what is it that you struggle with, and go towards the things that you struggle, because that's where the learning is going to occur. And that's where you might need repetition. And that's where, and it's okay. We don't expect anybody to know how to use a power drill the first time you pick it up. It might take you a couple times to figure out how to hold it. If anybody's used a power drill for the first time and you try to, like, line up a screw and the screw kind of shakes and the power drill, pushes off, you learn how to use that tool. Same when we learn how to cook, same when we learn how to handwrite. That's a huge thing. Actually, same when we learn how to talk and communicate. It takes us many years to learn how to talk. So there are many pieces to that. You're going to be better at some, not good at others. Observe what you're good at, what feels natural to you, and then push in the direction where you aren't good. It's a little bit intimidating. Let's see. Agata, not bad. Gradient wash, the red one. Is that, I can't see it because it's looking at, hold on, let me see if I can turn it around. I don't know if I can. Can you try to send these flipped upright so I can see them upright? Because right now it's showing up on the thread and because I'm not able to use my phone, I can't manipulate it as easily.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Not bad. Let's see. Valentina, okay, you kind of lost it, your gradient washes. Try it again. I want you to do both. What's happened is in two cases, your color just looks the same all the way across, your orange and your yellow. And the two in between have these hard edges at the top. So I want you to practice this again. It's hard. Do another set. Thank you, honey. That's helpful. Yeah. Oh, Renee, not too bad. Yeah, struggling. It's really hard. It's hard. This is a very hard thing to do. So don't worry about it, Renee. This actually, I kind of like your wet on wet gradient. And I feel like if you wet on dry, if you went back over the top with dark and came down, you'd be able to dark it. So, you're trying to make the area on top darker and the area below lighter. Yeah, this is the struggle. Welcome to the struggle. Oh, nice. Better, Agata. These are better. I particularly like your blue one. I think that's a nice transition. The green one's not too bad either. There's a kind of a little heavy line on the left-hand side where you go from medium to light. You might want to try tapping that out. I know it's super, super hard though, right? This is ridiculous. But this is the practice, right? This is the practice. So Don't worry about being perfect here. I want you guys to do another series, everyone to do another group and then send it over. Let's spend a little time on this one. The end of this lesson, you're going to get to take all these. We have one more technique to look at, type of mark making. You're going to take all these techniques and play with them and create little paintings, whatever you want. So there is an end in sight to this tedium of learning how to use it the first time. Your green is the most effective, Anik. I feel like you kind of lost your wet on wet, and your orange and your red need more work.
Definitely.
Although I do love your little people in between. That's so stinking cute. Please feel free to do something like that if you guys want to, just to make it more fun. I know this is like when you learn how to do something new, and we have forgotten a lot of that because you've already learned the hardest things, communicating, handwriting. You're all really smart. You've learned to be journalists and writers and editors and content producers. You know, you've learned so much that we forget that things are hard. And they have like steps, right? So this is, if this is like feeling, you're feeling frustrated, I want you, there's a frustration that's not healthy and helpful, but there's a frustration that's really helpful, which is noticing you're struggling to do it the right way. And you have to start over again and try it again. And you will find in that process that you will learn from that. Even if you can't quite get it, you will learn in that process the more you practice it. So I'm breaking this down so that when you come upon this mark making in a painting, which we will do not too far in the future, you're going to at least have a sense of what it's like. Ah, beautiful, MC, beautiful. Wow. Look at her wet on dry. Gradient wash, that's stunning. It looks like a sky. By the way, skies and paintings are usually, you know, a blue sky in paintings, a daylight sky is usually darker on the top of the piece and gets lighter as you get down to the horizon. So that could very easily be a sky in a painting. Was worth the effort, right, MC? She's like, yeah, fine. This is a little bit like doing laps around the parking lot if you're on a sports team. It's like, it's not exactly fun, but it is a necessary experience. And you guys are doing great. Shall I show you the last assignment before you get to just do your own thing? Play around. The last is going to be I'll take a look at that in a second, Renee. The last is going to be a gradient wash with two colors, one going up and one going down to meet. So what does that mean? That means we're going to do wet on wet, right? So once again, I'm wetting. I'm going to make a little bit longer thing here. And I'm going to start with a blue for the top. Oh, that damn wet on wet, it's so hard. Don't like it. Right, getting it a little bit. So I kind of got it at the beginning. Oh, no, not really. There we are. Get rid of that. Kind of got it. I'll keep working on it. Now from the bottom, I'm going to do green and go up and get lighter as I go up and meet the blue in the middle. So that's a gradient wash, two colors. And look what I have there, really. I have a little landscape. You might find going up easier than going down because the dark tends to pool at the bottom, right, of wet on wet, but you still need to make sure that's a soft edge as you go up. So see, I'm going in with more. And now I'm gonna kind of try and soften this a little bit so it's dark but not so heavy and a little bit lighter. Not too bad. Now I have two colors. Annoying. This may be, this is probably the hardest thing because you have to go back and forth. It's okay. We're just practicing. This is gradient wash, wet on wet. Two colors. And then we're going to do a gradient wash, wet on dry. Two colors. And let's see, let's do a wet on dry. Usually wet on dry is easier for such things. Start with, I mean, I'm still getting my brush wet, right, as I'm trying to go down. Oh, much easier. And then, let's see. I'm going to start down here, put more water on my brush, go up. Oh yeah, I think you'll find the gradient wash, two colors dry, way easier. And that kind of looks like a little sunset, right? Little soft edges. All right. So I'll send pictures of these. Wet on dry. Two colors. We have like 45 minutes left in class. 40 minutes, 45 minutes, however long you want to be on. So after you get a good variation of all of these, I want you to play around with them, make a little painting, maybe a little sunset, maybe a little water scene, you know, with two gradient washes. Let me take a look at what you guys have sent over. Not bad, Renee. Good. I think the second, when you gave yourself room, I think the second thing worked much better. Valentina, you're still kind of struggling. It's all kind of looking the same to me. So wait till your wet on dry dries, and then go back over the red on the top and try and get rid of that line on the top and have it come down a little bit. Keep working on it. Just keep working on it. You might need more water too. In between layers. So in between every stroke, you might want to dip your brush in water to really get that transition. That's a pretty blue, by the way, Renee. It's one of my favorites. Nice. Very good, you guys. Excellent. This is so the struggle. One of my favorite teachers ever. I'm mostly self-taught. Although I have apprenticed with many painters. I actually spent 5 years living in Eastern Europe, apprenticing with every good painter I could meet to learn how to be a better artist. I learned a lot, mostly about drawing, because my painting was much more natural to me than, but everything, on everything. I learned a lot. And I'm a big believer in, so I'm a big believer in education, but not to the, not art school. I think we can create a better art school for pennies on the dollar by taking classes like this, practicing, learning to do what you can do. So I learned a lot. And one of my favorite teachers taught a figure drawing class in Portland. And I remember her name was Lynn Katagawa. And figure drawing, I had been a painter for 10 years, but an artist for 10 years by that point. And figure drawing was like the great divide for me. And I learned so much in her class that like now it's my favorite class to teach figure drawing. I'm not fantastic at it, but I understand it like from a functional point of view. And one of the things she would do, such a nice woman, she would sit behind us as we were working, and you'd just be feeling like, oh, fuck, like she's looking at me and judging. And I remember looking back at her once, and she sighed and said, "You guys work so hard." That was her takeaway was just, oh, she was just a very gentle soul. And she admired the struggle. And that for me was such a permission to keep going the way I was going, struggling, getting some things right, getting other things wrong, like working on it. It was really neat.
As opposed to what a disaster,
Yeah, you're terrible. Yeah, exactly. You can't do this.
We should just start over.
she was such a wonderful teacher. She never made you feel like she really appreciated all levels of the struggle. And she just knew the right thing to say all the time. That little sigh. You guys work so hard. It was beautiful. I'll take a picture of these. You might also find that as your gradient wash dries, you lose a little bit of, hold on, I'm gonna take a picture of this. No, wait, what am I doing? Stop. Sorry. God dang it. Where? You lose a little bit of contrast, so it looks more flat. That's because as watercolor dries, it lightens a little bit. So that you'd be like, hey, this looked really great when it was wet. But if it's dry, it kind of, so I'm looking at my green right now and feeling like I need to kind of rework that a little bit. My green gradient wash, because as it dried, it got a little bit more uniform. So I might do that in just a second, but let me look at what everybody else is doing. So that's the other thing. That's so unfair. You're like, oh, I got it perfect. Not bad, Valentina, but notice it's you really want it darker, more evenly dark up here, fading to lighter. And once again, you're kind of losing your color on the bottom. And maybe I am too a little bit. So maybe that's a good point to work on it. Here. Watch me. I'm gonna layer more dark. So see how I'm kind of going back over this bottom layer and adding a little bit more color and then pulling it up a little bit. I didn't say I was tapping. It's a lot of tapping. Oh, there we go. That's kind of a nice. So I kind of was able to tap that out. I noticed here that I lost my gradient wash on the dry, so I'm going to go back in and try and get it. Notice on every layer, I'm dipping in the water to get lighter. Notice I'm also struggling a little bit. This isn't easy for me either, completely. Probably a little easier for me because I've done it more. I taught it earlier in the week as well. There's a Tuesday class really based on US audience that also does watercolor. A bit better. See what happens when that dries. Nice. Nice, Anik. Yeah, getting there. Fun. So make yourself a little painting. You can use all these use the brush making techniques that feel fun to you and make a little painting. Oops. I tried to use my finger. Bad idea. Don't do it. I think I have some I guess I have because I showed you the burnt sienna was still wet. I have it on my finger and then I rubbed it right on my painting. I'm gonna remove the spotlight now because I want you to just be working now, trying to create little paintings. You can do fun things like what Anik is doing with little people on the side. You can try and maybe take a little bit of extra mark making and turn your field into, like, you can put flowers on it. I don't know, do whatever you want. Uh, uh, Combine kind of unusual colors, make a little painting or mini. Play or just keep practicing this technique. Whatever you feel like is going to help you more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to show my snake. I'm really struggling. I almost switched to a rabbit.
Okay. Do you want to send it over?
Yeah.
Good. That's a good ambitious thing though, Sandra. Always with the new ones.
It's because it's the year of a snake, but they have so many scales. And I kind of get lost in them.
But you only need to make a few.
Well, that's what I thought, but actually, maybe I tried too hard. I don't know.
It's hard to know where the transitions really are.
Yeah.
Right. It's
So
hard.
I tried just doing. My goal was to do blocks of colors and then do a few scales.
Yeah.
And I'm not finished, but it's.
But Sandra, this is great
that
practice.
when I botch up the scales, when I kind of do them, you know, vaguely, it shows exactly that I did it.
That's the problem with watercolor. It's a bit. Everybody here is like, oh yeah, we know.
Oh, and this is also hot press, but it was a mistake for this. I should have taken. Would have been easier.
Hey, Diana, can you send over where you are on your mother's portrait right now? And since I didn't get a chance to look at it before, I'd like to see where you're at the moment. Let's see.
I'm tinkering.
Oh, Sandra. Oh no, you're not in bad shape at all, honey. I know it feels hard, and here's what I would say. You have given so no, you're in good shape. I'm going to pop this up so people can really see this. But I see why you feel uncomfortable. It's kind of an uncomfortable moment, right? Here, hold on.
By the way, guys, it's always uncomfortable until it isn't.
Right.
It's like an ugly stage, but the longer you stay in it, the more panicky you
No,
get.
you're in good shape.
But here's what I want you to know that you did, and you did right. Your detail is in the right place. So now you can focus on less detail in the areas below the head that are kind of body and pushed back and more shadowed. So I don't think you've, yes. Oh, that's looking great, Diana. I'm sorry, I'm trying to share this. Here, hold on. I want to push up. I want you guys to see Sandra's right now while you're working. It's beautiful. An excellent first attempt, I think.
I'm not doing it again.
Really? Yeah. But I mean, with the new subject and everything. So what you've got here, so what's really great, number one, Sandra, is nothing is too dark, right?
Straight away, some parts I need to darken.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So part of it is you're darkening under here, right? You can darken here. This kind of level of detail is good for the face, but down here, you can kind of work. There's this nice, extend this shadow up more because it can get darker, and so it can get darker here, and then work the little edge here, but you don't have to do so much work on this. See if you can work the edge here, but you don't have to do as much work as you did up here because this is the focus, right? Yeah. So you got it.
And I think if you do the greenery to the right, and then the blue part that you have there, if you darken those two areas to a darker green, the head will pop forward much more.
Okay. Absolutely. That's a great, another great observation. So you're in much better shape, but what's really great,
you're in good shape.
And And what I want to show you guys, what Sandra's learned to do with a watercolor is she doesn't get too dark too quickly. She really layers her darks in. So,
Yeah.
because once you get too dark, you can't really go back. Yeah, that's what we want, Renee. Slow and steady wins the race. Anyway, wonderful work, Sandra, and super ballsy.
And
Super
also,
ballsy and really hard.
yeah, can I say another thing? Just make
Yeah.
sure that the green in the background, the green and blue, is completely different from the snake as well.
I know it's different because the snakes have so many greens. So,
Yeah.
So shall I go, if I go much darker on the one on the right,
Yeah.
it's going to start looking like the snake's shadow. Is that okay?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
okay.
because it's a different green.
Yeah, it's
But
okay.
it's not going to be necessarily.
It's a different green. It is the darkest thing in the composition.
And then when you find that, just do a thin layer over the blue so it gets a green tint over it.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
There's now Diana is talking about something that's very nuanced, which is the idea that color reflects off each other. So when you're painting like a red apple and it's sitting on a green table, you'll have a little bit of, or next to a green wall, you'll have a little bit of green in that red apple, right? It'll reflect. Take a look at subjects. You'll see that little bits of the color next to what it is drift themselves in. So there are nuanced ways of like kind of trying to show that without making it really obvious. And that is a subtle way of, putting a little light green layer, a little watery green layer over the blue will make it a little bit greener, but not pronounced, right? It won't be a pronounced thing. It's a subtle.
It's not easy because it's reactivating the blue underneath.
Definitely you want to go wet on dry on this technique, but yeah, it'll still reactivate. But the nice thing is you can just keep making that darker. That area you can kind of muck around with a little bit because there's no way to really ruin it too much.
It's going to be lovely, Sandra.
Yeah, it's looking really nice.
Thank you.
Very ambitious.
Yes,
very ambitious.
A bit too ambitious.
Snake
woman.
But it's the year of a snake,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Oh, Diana, that's looking really great. I would minimize the lines that you have in her teeth.
Yeah.
I love the tilt of her head. If you can slightly lighten the iris on the right side of the right eye.
I haven't worked on the eyes yet.
Got it. Okay. But these are great. This is looking great.
The eyes are just like roughly sketched in there.
Nice, MC. Not too bad. Keep on working it. Nice, Renee. Yeah, it becomes very fun. Oh yeah, look at Renee, your single wet on wet gradient and wet on dry gradients totally look like sky. Actually, so does your wet on dry and your wet gradient color. Nice. Good job, you guys. Great. You work so hard. Anik is having all kinds of fun with dragons and oh my God, I love this so much. It's darling. Do whatever, let her inspire you to muck around with this. Anik, is this helpful to you?
Yeah, I thought that like after a few years with acrylic, I lost like the grip of the techniques, and simply this is really helpful.
It's just obviously, because it's absolutely, I know you started with watercolor a long time ago,
Yeah,
but you're right, it's
time ago.
entirely different. I found that too, being primarily an acrylic and oil painter, I found that as I went to watercolor, sometimes it's weird, it's kind of a weird transition, but then you kind of find your feet in it. And it's just practicing the subtlety of the techniques. So they will start to feed each other after a while.
That's what I hope for.
Yes, it's wonderful. Great work, everybody. It's fun. I'll be right back, guys. I'm gonna get a little bit of water.
Oh, Little Highness. You're very high maintenance, you know.
Anik has a little helper. We like children. We like pets. We like Diana, I feel this portrait project has really got you like popping on portraits in a really good way. It's a really fantastic practice.
And it's fun because as they are from different eras, they have to be different in colors.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're all your people. It's your line. It's your line. It's really profound. I like it. And then you can practice your techniques. I mean, I know you do a lot of portraiture, so you're always working on that, but I like this series. You're right, because of the shift in color, the shift in tone, the shift in style, right? And then there's the things that are the same,
Yeah.
that don't change, right? I bet you're learning that as you get to go through. You know, the nice thing about painting is that you can spend a lot of time. I don't know if you guys have, I'm sure you guys have this feeling of a magical moment that just where the view sort of refreshes you and makes you feel so amazing or in awe or scared or whatever it is. Like there are these moments in time. We have them all the time, probably many a day. And painting allows you, like Renee said, to stop, slow down, and be in those moments, to try and reconvey those moments, to try and pull out what is special about them. And you will find that your own feelings about it are very important here. In journalism, right, they often tell you not to put your own feelings into things, although I think that's impossible. But like as much as you can, you're trying to balance and see all the sides and all of that. But in painting, you're trying to put as much of yourself in as possible. And weirdly, the better you do at that, the more universal it is, the more universal the images, because and they will mean different things to different people. I've learned as a painter who sells my work, I mean that I make a living selling art, that like what I think the art means is not at all necessarily what the person who's buying the art thinks it means. And they might or might not ask me about it. So I have learned when somebody's looking at a painting at a show to ask them what they think about it. And when they tell me, have them explore that more deeply. And that usually is the trigger, A, to get them to buy it if they want it, if it's doing something for them. But also, it's like interesting to see how people respond. That image also was something that was very specifically something I saw, did, felt, put into it. It wasn't a generic image. So that's the kind of interesting, just like, I don't know, any great novel has great specifics, but if it's a great enough novel, it'll still mean something at any age, at any time. Painting can do the same. And it's the kind of the things we notice become very important. The things we decide to emphasize are going to be different. Also, the way you handle the tool is different. You're all probably seeing that as you see your stuff. And there's more than one way to get it and get it right. It's not just one way. And there's not, and everybody's gonna like, so this is what you're exploring now. And I used to dive right into doing demos, but I feel like that, like you paint an apple with me. But I felt like these lately, as I'm learning more about what people don't know necessarily, naturally about the brush, it helps to have these beginning lessons to get used to it. And then and then eventually, of course, you pick your own subjects. I mean, I taught a class to Anik 2 years ago on how to paint trees, a lot of trees in a subject. And she's been painting a lot. She's been doing forest paintings ever since. There is a technique that you need to follow in making that work. It feels overwhelming, but it isn't as hard as you think it is. It's manageable. And then you can take that and run with that if that's what you want to do. There's no end to technique and where it can take you. You're welcome to share stuff across. You're welcome to just keep working. In about 15 minutes, maybe we'll take a look at where everybody is. Sometimes these first lessons go a little bit less than 2 hours properly. Although Diana and Sandra, of course, I'll stay on for you guys. If you don't want to, stay on as long, that's okay. Nice. I feel like you're on a roll there. MC. Nice. Add something to it. Put in a little flower field. Yes, there we go. And feel free to mess it up. Like that's like the real thing here. One of the things I want you to notice, and here I'll pop back up just to show you. And look at what happened in my dang gradient wash, wet on dry. It just got totally ridiculous. It moved around and blended. Feel free, once something dries, feel free to, I don't know, add things to it. If something's being stubborn and not doing what you want it to do, go with what it seems to want to do. You'll notice as I lay on, so this is very heavy red on green. And even though it looks slightly, I'll send you a picture. It's much brighter actually than it looks here. It's slightly mixing with the green because the green's mostly dry and because I went very heavy with the wet paint on top, I was able to turn this into something I liked. Here, hold on. Send you a picture you can see. You still really can't. Let's see. They're looking a little dark today, but there we go. Some art teachers do want you to paint like they do. I particularly find a teacher that paints in a particular style and teaches it likes that. I really don't want you to do that. I don't want your paintings to look like mine, but we're going to be painting the same subject a lot. What I want you to do is know what you're doing with technique, with color mixing, using your brush, using water and watercolor, right? All of those things. Next week, we're going to practice with some landscapes, little landscapes, bigger ones. To talk about composition, other neat things. Here, hold on, I'll pull that down.
Are you working today, Sandra?
No, I can paint more with you.
Good.
Okay, so you guys will just stay on.
Yeah, and anybody else who wants to stay. I'm so glad to get a break because I've been editing the Los Angeles fires all week and it's so breaking.
Yeah,
It's so awful.
We're setting up an emergency fund for journalists and photographers that lost their workspace,
Oh, good.
equipment, and
How about their cars? How about their
Well, I
cars?
guess those of them that evacuated. Oh, some people had to abandon their cars. Yeah.
yeah.
Renee's
Well,
car got stolen,
I'm worried about the animals.
so
The
maybe she
wildlife.
can also apply. Keep that in mind, Renee. LA Press Club might be able to help you with that.
Oh, how can you help?
Were you listening?
No, I spaced out for a second. I'm so sorry.
Diana said they're setting up a fund for
Oh.
people who, reporters and photographers and editors who've lost their workspaces.
Yeah. Yeah, I was hesitant to apply to any emergency funds because I was like, I don't know if this counts, but I mean, I think, yeah, I just I don't obviously want to pool into a money pool that's for fire victims, but I'm like, I'm a different type of fire victim.
You're a fire victim in an integrate, but I mean, Diana can make that decision. She doesn't have to, but you at least
I don't make the decision. It's a committee.
Right. Exactly. So
Yeah.
you should at least apply for it. It
Oh,
can't
that
hurt.
makes sense. Okay, thank you.
That's nice, Diana. Thank you for doing that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, obviously we need to raise funds as well for it, so.
Well, let me know. I'd contribute to that fund.
Yeah, that's
not a lot, but I can contribute something.
No, but other journalist organizations are also pitching in and promoting the fund, and I'm of course asking companies and
Yeah.
Golden Globe Foundation and others
Right.
pitching. So we'll see. I mean, during COVID, I don't think we'll get that much this time, but during COVID, we managed to raise 225,000 for.
Oh, that's nice.
That went to journalists that lost work, that couldn't work because of COVID, and
right.
Which was
so this is another thing.
Freelancers and yeah.
Hey Sandra, check it out. Hermes is up here to say hello.
Hello, big cat.
Hello, big boy. He's so snoozy.
Cat.
Hermes is a art class cat, born and raised on this art thread. That's art classes. Everybody has known him from the beginning, from his beginning.
Yep. Yeah, we long timers have.
Yes. Not yet. The long timers have, yes, but he's a born and raised. He knows the art school. He knows the art class thing. Let's see. And you guys also be aware that this WhatsApp thread, you can kind of talk to each other on it. However, you cannot. Oh, cool. Ah, nice, Valentina. You're starting to get there. Yes, 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 yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Good job. I know it's so damn fucking hard, isn't it? Like, it's just so hard as hell. Oops, sorry, boo-boo. Did I take you on your head? Didn't mean to. Where's Joel? Come on. Up, up. Take a second when you're ready to like kind of slow down to write 3 words about how you feel right now. I'll do it too. I'll share mine. And if anybody wants to share them all the way through. I started out this class being a little sluggish, tired, but happy to see everybody. That's my classic extrovert, great day or yellow lab personality. I'm pretty happy to see people. But I was tired because I had a really long day yesterday that went for a long, long time. Lots of meetings, lots of classes, a lot of time in the studio. And in the middle, I felt focused, absorbed, and calm. And now I feel pleased and tired. It's a different kind of tired. So note it, but I definitely don't feel sluggish anymore. And I definitely don't feel like kind of over exhausted. I just have a kind of sense of, oh, we did something for like an hour and almost 2 hours. So does anybody else want to look at those and share them? You don't have to. But if you want to, what did you write at the beginning of class? What is in the middle? MC, do you want to share that?
Sure. I think at the beginning it was like hyper focused work mode.
You were ready.
It was just kind of like I'd gotten off, so very busy and very kind of hyper focused. And then in the middle it was frustrated but also happy. And I think at the end kind of mostly it's playful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went from like, because that for you, you're getting off work. So that transition from work to painting is a really hard transition. It's a hard stop. So notice that in the middle, and frustration is often part of it in the middle. I like that you said frustrated but happy. I totally know that feeling. Like that's a great feeling. You're like, God damn it, I'm not getting this. And now you're feeling like totally not work oriented by the end of 2 hours. Anybody else do this exercise? Did anybody else notice it? What did you write? Who wants to share it? Anyone? No, maybe not. Everybody's just working. Valentina is smiling to herself in a very happy way. I'm going to say that you probably made a transition that's pretty good right now. That's awesome. That's all I'll say. This is awesome. You will notice a significant transition in the 2 hours. Wherever you started, you're definitely going to be in a different place by the end of class. Sometimes you will end class frustrated, but that's okay. That just means you've hit your wall of what you know, and we're going to keep, you're going to keep working on it. That is allowed. Remember, there's a kind of frustration that we achieve, and then there's a kind of frustration that we can't do anything about. So this is one of those things where you can do something about it. I think I'm going to stop the recording at this point.